So let's call this segment, is it my intuition or survival mode? 7 questions to tell the difference. And so, have you ever felt as if your feelings or emotions were compelling you beyond your better judgment, especially when it comes to love? Maybe you've expressed or experienced butterflies in your stomach when you met a previous partner, only to watch that fiery relationship crash and burn in the end. And so, as a result, you might find yourself thinking, I don't think my intuition is all that great. That's what got me into this mess in the first place. And maybe you're really wanting to know, are all the butterflies bad? What about gut intuition? How do I know if my nervous system is being triggered in survival mode when it comes to my attachment relationships versus having a genuine intuitive sense about someone that may or may not be good for me? Well, you're not alone in this. In my online community, individuals often share posts and comments expressing questions like this. And so if you can relate to it, that's what we're going to talk about in this segment. So I'm going to define intuitive butterflies versus a triggered survival response and how you can tell the difference. We're also going to cover 7 questions to assist you in that assessment, using the chakra system as a framework for understanding the wisdom of your body and the energy that it generates. And I really think that this is important because it's going to help you to understand the embodied nature of not only your attachments, but also your inner wisdom. So I invite you to stick with me. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Brianna McWilliam, and I am a licensed and board-certified creative arts therapist, author, and educator with more than 15 years in the field, helping adults struggling with insecure attachment go from self-doubting to self-sovereign so they can attract those soul-shaking, passionate partnerships that they want without having to talk in circles around their feelings for hours or even years on end with no tangible result. And I do this using a psycho-spiritual approach to creative arts interventions using the McWilliam method. Today, I'm going to be sharing a clip of a live stream event that took place inside my private Facebook groups, which people can access once they've purchased one of my online courses. If you're interested in finding out if you might have insecure attachment, check out the link in the caption of this video. You'll be able to take an easy 4-question quiz and find out your attachment style, plus a detailed explanation. Now, if you like what you see and hear, and you haven't yet, make sure that you like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications. I put out videos once or twice a week, and sometimes I will do occasional live streams through my YouTube channel, and I wouldn't want you to miss out. Now, I want to start by again stating the question and simplifying it a little bit. So how do I know if I am operating under an automatic survival mode response, or I'm actually having, let's say, a spiritual intuition and a gut feeling about somebody or something? Now, I believe that not all butterflies in your stomach means that it's a bad situation. It just means that you should pay attention and use your discernment to qualify all the other information that you are receiving in order to make meaning of that experience. So one way to do this is to what I call drop in and dialogue with the feeling using things like meditation and art making to determine what it means, for example. And if you have purchased a course or you've been following me for a while, you have a lot of examples of that in your content. If you haven't, you can also find examples of this on my YouTube channel and in my Facebook groups in the videos. Additionally, there is a sense of urgency that we experienced almost always whenever there is an ego attachment or a survival need in operation. And ego attachments and survival needs are often intricately interwoven. And if you want to learn more about that, I invite you to check out my video on attachment theory versus ego attachments. Now, this is essentially an automatic anxiety that lights up your physical body because there is a threat in the world of physical form. Your intuition, on the other hand, would be connected to a much bigger and broader and wiser aspect of yourself, and or we might say some kind of spiritual collective of your belief and or understanding, whatever that is for you, that truly does not have any urgent concerns because it is everlasting and ever present. And so this part of yourself is almost impossible to access it unless you have moved out of or away from threatening situations that stimulate survival concerns and impulses on the body level, because there's just no room for it in that circumstance. You have to protect the physical body first. So intuition emerges when you are calm, focused and listening for subtle sensations, signs, feelings, and messages. And this usually requires that you create a safe and sacred context or ritual in which you are intentionally setting out to access that wisdom. This is not to say it can't come in unexpected moments, but you can utilize it to your advantage if you can create this kind of context. Now, knowing that relationships might be a hot topic for me, for example, and I start to feel the butterflies, then what I would do is I would notice it. I would take note if there are any urgent feelings surrounding that experience, and then I might force myself to be patient and really sit with those feelings until more information is made available to me, because the environment will start to reconfigure itself around me and eventually real clarity will emerge. It might also be useful to know that excitement and anxiety can light up in the same part of the brain, and oftentimes the difference is the narrative that we write around it. And so I wouldn't want to give up all excitement because I'm too afraid of being anxious, but I would pause to reflect on what the feeling may be wanting to show me. And so, for example, we raise our voices when we're mad, and we do the same thing when we're excited. And if you've ever lived on top of a sports bar like I have, then you know what I mean. But if we don't know the language that a person is speaking, we might assume that it's all bad and misjudge the situation. So we have to learn to speak from our own inner language. We have to become familiar with it. And it is a language of sensation and subtle emotion and impressions, so that we can understand when our body is raising its voice, what it is that it's actually saying. Because both our survival mode responses and our intuition are embodied experiences. So the trick would be getting to know your body really well and how it responds to your environment, both the internal and external environment, so you can better discern which is which. And so in my own experience as a Reiki practitioner, I like to use the chakra system, which, for those of you that don't know, is an ancient framework for understanding how energy manifests in the body from tantric yogic tradition. I use the chakra system as a template for sifting through my sensations and determining if my thoughts and feelings are my intuition or a survival mode response. So for example, the crown, there are 7 centers in the body primarily. There's more than that, but the main ones are 7, and they go down the length of your spine. So the top, we have the crown, and this represents your connection to your higher knowing, and it can influence your sense of meaning and purpose, your sense of connection to all things. So is this something that is difficult for you to access? If it is, then survival mode may be in operation. And you can't think about things like legacy or generativity or finding a sense of meaning and purpose in your life if you are always living hand to mouth, for example, or if you're just trying to make it to the next step at a time. Okay. Then we move down into the third eye right here. And this denotes our ability to see patterns and make wise predictions without getting caught in limiting beliefs or urgency. So if you start having urgent thoughts about scarce opportunities for love in the world or partnership or anything else in your life, then it's likely that you are living, to some degree at least, in survival mode. Because I'm going to call it spirit or source is never in a rush, because the possibilities are endless in an abundant universe. And so when you start thinking, I'll never find another love like this, I better grit my teeth and bear it, then you are in survival mode. Then we have the throat. And the throat allows you to speak your truth. When we fear expressing what is going on inside of us, or when we think we need to scream it in order to be heard, then we are likely in survival mode. Because on the one hand, we might fear retribution or punishment for speaking out, and then we start to adopt this idea that we must be inherently bad, or we must be repulsive or a burden to other people if we express who we really are. Or secondly, we might rail against a lack of being seen, heard, mirrored, or validated, and so we try to force ourselves into someone else's line of sight and experience so that we gain that validation and acknowledgement. Then we have the heart. Now, if it feels unsafe to open your heart for fear of getting hurt, then you're in survival mode. Believing that love is a finite resource comes from experiencing conditions of worth and regard. So everything is a tit for tat, and there is often a scoreboard above the relationship. There is little giving without an expectation of getting in equal measure. And this is because love is often over-identified with an exchange of concrete goods and services and time, rather than an ethereal emotional experience of acceptance of self and other and regard that flows freely all around us. Then we have the solar plexus, and this is in the upper abdomen. So the solar plexus tends to be connected to our sense of personal agency and will. So it's also often connected to our what's called ego identity, but we might say like our personality or our waking concept of ourselves. So when you feel powerless, this is our exertion of power into the world. It's how we enact our will upon the world. So when you feel powerless, again, you're likely in survival mode. And oftentimes when we have feelings of shame, fears of being found out, we have a sense of an imposter syndrome that others are going to expose us for who we really are. That's associated with the solar plexus, and those are survival mode concerns. Then moving down lower between the hips, below the navel and between the hips, we have the sacral chakra. It's a womb space on a cisgender woman. And this is connected to emotion, creativity, abstraction, the ability to sit with duality. And so if you fall into what are called splits, then you may be in survival mode. So splits are exemplified by black and white thinking. You're either all in or you're all out. Work hard, play hard. There's no in between, no understanding of gray areas, right? So, for example, I had someone in my community wondering about the boundaries of a Rolling Stone partner because they needed more space. And they interpreted that space as a total and utter rejection. So for open hearts, anxious open hearts, when they experience closeness as completely fused and all in, when someone says, no, I need some space here, the only thing they understand, the opposite of this would be way over here. So they don't understand the degrees of proximity that exists between here, 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 and here. So if someone says this is too close, they automatically assume they're being fully rejected and that they must need to go all the way over there. So, but the same thing happens for the Rolling Stone. They also struggle to understand these degrees of closeness, right? So if this is too much, then they send you all the way over there because they don't know how to navigate that terrain either. So this is the splits, all in or all out. You can also see this exemplified when in an argument, you're convinced just because you had a conflict that they're going to completely break up with you or that they hate you now, or you feel like you have to villainize your partner in order to get over them, right? They can't be both. You can't love them and know that they're still not good for you long term. It's got to be one or the other. And if they're not good for you long term, then they must hate you and be evil. Okay. Then lastly, we have the root, and this is in the perianum. And this is connected to safety and body integrity. Okay. So if you don't feel safe inside what I'm going to call your sacred temple, you may be in survival mode. We also see this exemplified by our own relationship to our body, how comfortable we are inside of our bodies, how we feed our bodies, how we dress our bodies, how we care for our bodies, how we talk about our bodies, how we think about our bodies. All of this is reflective of a root chakra manifestation of energy, right? If our bodies have been violated, then we may have a certain kind of energetic armor that we walk around with that can impact all of the other chakras that we've spoken about, because the root is the first to form and it is also at the foundation of all these other chakras. So if you've had physical violations, then every subsequent chakra is likely to be impacted by a sort of freezing up of the root, or a melting of the root, kind of like an uncontainable kind of boundaryless expansiveness where we don't understand our relationship to others in physical space. So the way you might see this manifest in real terms is you might see hyper or hyposexuality, for example. You might see someone who walks into a room and their body is really tight and they are keenly aware of everything that they touch. And maybe they sit down and they fold their arms and they cross their legs and they start jigging their ankle, right? Maybe they accidentally kick the coffee table and a pencil adjusts in the cup. They immediately notice it and put the pencil right back and their body shrinks even more. On the other hand, you might have someone walk in the room who's carrying a ton of bags, wearing a lot of layers. They're unaware of the way they move through space. They sort of, spread out on the couch and they knock a few things over and completely unaware or oblivious to it. And if you point it out to them, they may seem like, oh, I didn't even realize, right? So these are the different dimensions that express themselves. And if you feel like that is heavily in operation, then you may be in survival mode. So I'm going to go through I'm going to express these 7 dimensions as questions to bring it all together. So first, do you struggle to find meaning and purpose in your life? Yes or no? If you do, then you may be struggling with some survival mode responses. Do you see your options as limited and urgent? If so, then you may be struggling with a survival mode response. Do you feel safe speaking your mind, expressing what is inside of you, outside of you? If you don't, then you may be struggling with survival concerns. If you are afraid to open your heart, that is a survival concern. If you feel a lack of self-control or as if you are helpless and cannot exert your will in the world, that's a survival concern. If you, moving down lower into the sacral, if you feel doubtful, unclear, fearful, and or ambivalent most of the time, and you feel like you have to put things into boxes, right and wrong, black and white, in or out, then you may be struggling with survival concerns of the sacral. If you feel unhappy or unsafe in your body and you have a contentious relationship to it, then you may also be struggling with survival concerns. And I would end by saying that in order to address these concerns on every level, you would have to dig into how you experience the shadow aspect of each of these dimensions, okay? And also make contact with it through the body, because the body is the first organizer of your energy and of your experience. So I hope that this little video segment helps you with discerning that. And if you like this content, just give me a little yes in the comments there, a little thumbs up just to let me know, and we can generate more like it.